What is going on, Fight fans? We are here after beta weekend. And of course, me, Edward Vasquez, content manager. We have Ash Habib here, the creative director, and also the global communications director, Will Kinsler, because we're going to talk all about beta weekend. So I'm going to throw it off to you guys. How did we feel about that beta weekend?
Well, I think we felt pretty good. I mean, I guess the first thing I can do is share some of the numbers. We had 17,000 people come through and play during the course of the weekend. You guys played over 1 million rounds in 141,000 matches. So, for us to put the beta call out about a week before and have so many people show up and give feedback, I think was pretty exciting for us. I think, for me, I came to work on a boxing game to work with a live audience playing the game. So that was my first opportunity to do that, which was really exciting. I know, I most want to hear from Ash just because, obviously, Ash, you've gone from, this is an idea in your head to, talking with your brothers and how do we get a studio started that can make a boxing game, and here we are playing like at scale for the first time, like that had to be, I don't know, were you more nervous, more excited? Like, how did you feel going into it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was pretty daunting at the beginning, right? I'm not gonna shy away from saying that because as you said, from where we began to where we are right now, building the game for 2.5 years, going through. This is how we think it's going to work. This is how we think players will enjoy the game. So then for it to you hit the button for it to go live, for then people to get their hands on what you've been working on for the last 2-3 years. It's been it was an interesting point. So yeah, it was exciting at the same time, but we were one or two nerves in there, right, when it went live. But yeah, look, overall, we're pleased with how things had panned out. Obviously, there's issues for us to work on. But yeah, that was kind of it's been an eye opener of a weekend for sure.
Yeah, and obviously when you do something like this, whenever you're working on any game and it's the first time that a bunch of people play it, you just don't know how it's going to go. You have a hunch, right? Like we show the game to creators, we show the game to boxers, and people tell us like, "Oh, we think you've got a good game. You've got something here." But until you put it in front of a bigger audience, you just don't know. So it was really encouraging to see so many people, that were enthusiastic about it after playing, and also just, I think there's people that recognize like this is hard, right? Like we're a small studio. We're trying to bring boxing back to the video game space because we all want it, and we know that there's so many fans that want and deserve a great boxing game. And but it's hard, and so like I think it was cool to see people afterwards recognizing like, hey, we're rooting for you. You know what I mean? That we support you. And of course, not everybody knows how small the studio we are, and not everybody knows, and of course, people don't have to worry about how hard it is to make a game. We just want them to play and enjoy it. But it's kind of cool when you see so many people that are like, yeah, you guys did the thing. You did all right, and I think that kind of stuff feels pretty good. And of course, the main thing is, our primary reason for doing this was to test online matchmaking, and we definitely tested it. We put out some updates during the weekend. I think the last few hours of it were a bit smoother for people. But the data that we got from that is super valuable for us because we want to when we launch this game into early access, we want it to be as smooth of a launch as it can possibly be. So yeah, I mean, I think we all
Yeah.
felt pretty good overall about how the weekend went.
Yeah, yeah, and we definitely got a lot of reactions, a lot of feedback from our audience. So that's the thing I want to move on to next, talking about what was the biggest feedback that we saw coming out of this beta from the community. And I'll kick it off to you guys.
Let's talk about the happy stuff first,
You always
because
want to start
that's
happy.
always fun. Yeah, I mean, I think we talk a lot about footwork, right, when it comes to the game, and of course our our way we talk about the game is authentic boxing, and then there's like all these things that make up authentic boxing, and footwork is like one of those key things. And you never know, like when we say that, it's like it doesn't sound that exciting, you know what I mean, when you just talk about it and you sit and but when you play the game and understand it, the way that you can position yourself, it was really cool to see people recognize, like, I'm a boxing fan and I understand that that I want to get these angles and get my head off the center line, and see people using some of that stuff. I was really encouraged to see that people recognize that, and we're just talking about the fact that, hey, my boxing knowledge actually helps me be better at this game. I think that's a thing that we've strived for, and that it was exciting to see.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, in terms of feedback, echoing well, it was great to see people getting to grips with the mechanics and the different aspects of the game that we've put together, right? I do think there's an element of our game where I just feel like if you've played previous boxing games, and if you were good at previous boxing games, that's not going to automatically make you good at our game, right? And one of the things that struck me was when I was playing against players online, I genuinely found that people would come just to the center of the ring and try the tried and tested mechanic of weaving, punching, without using the other mechanics we've got in the game. So I think playing against those kind of players, and then coming up against throughout, let's say, going into Saturday and going into then Sunday evening, I definitely saw more and more players starting to utilize, the outside fighting, the movement, fighting off the back foot, mechanics which you haven't really seen used before in previous boxing games. So, I do think there's an element of unlearning what you think you know about boxing games, coming into Undisputed with a fresh mind, and almost a blank slate, and then picking up those mechanics. And that's something that we obviously, as a studio, have to work on in terms of having tutorials and giving players tips on how to best use the mechanics. But yeah, I mean, just kind of seeing people put what you had in your mind to use, and putting that in play, and seeing it on screen visually is was a satisfying moment. But then there is an element of players who just don't know these mechanics exist, and just going into a bit of a rock'em sock'em mode. So yeah, there's a balance we've definitely got to find with that.
Yeah, and of course the game looks better when you use all the tools than when you go into Rock'em Sock'em mode. And I think it's like a natural thing for people, an instinct for people to do that, right? Like I can hit people, I'm gonna try it. And but I think that when you saw people that were using the tool set, like I had watched, Coach's Corner made a great video talking about how to manage distance, and he was up against somebody who was kind of an aggressive fighter that was trying to hit him, and he showed how you can really control your opponent with distance by using the jab, slowing people down. And I think, yeah, it'll take time, but a beta weekend's not enough time for everybody to master all the techniques in the game. And to your point, we've got to do a bit more moving forward to make sure that people understand what they all are.
Yeah.
I guess we can talk about some of the specific things that people talked about. Damage was a thing that we actually tuned over the course of the weekend, right, Ash?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there were a few mechanics during this beta weekend that we had either disabled or turned down. But one of the beauties about actually being in a small team making this game is that we can be pretty agile about responding to the community, and actually putting fixes in place whilst people were playing the game. So damage after the first evening, right, we felt was a little bit on the low side. But again, we put these things in place as well to test out, how this thing plays out in the wild, right? So we decided to increase the amount of damage that players were doing. But then, there's another kind of major element to this in that we disabled flash knockdowns and flash dazed states within the game. So I think it probably felt that everybody had a bit of a granite chin, right? That people were maybe taking too much damage before they were able to be rocked or dropped to the canvas. So we're pretty confident once we kind of put those back in, it'll feel more realistic in terms of what you're expecting to see. So yeah.
And probably having Gaddy and Ward in there didn't help that either. Those are both guys that could take a punch. I mean, I don't, obviously, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things to think about is obviously we got a lot of great feedback. We got a lot of great feedback on just the 4 fighters, right? So when you play the game, and you've got that full early access roster, it's going to feel pretty different. Some of the matchups will feel pretty different. And it does change the way you played, and not, knowing that I wasn't gonna get flash knocked down. Ash, I was a little more bold. I was a little more bold at certain times. I tend to be like a pretty cautious player, and I was boxing a little bit, but then I was like in the later rounds, sometimes I'd be like, well, they're not gonna flash knock me down, so I would trade with them a little bit. It'll be okay if I take some damage. I'm still gonna win. So, yeah, and I think the thing too to think about with all of this stuff, right? Because we read through all the feedback and people are like, oh, that this has got to be addressed and that's got to be addressed, and I think for us the arc of how we tune the game and make these changes is not a thing that we do over a weekend and then we're done, right? Like even as we go into early access, tuning the game and understanding the right balance is a thing that's going to happen over time, and that will change too when people know more about how to play it. It's the way that people are playing the game over the course of 3 days, it's going to be pretty different. 6 weeks into an early access or 2 months, however long it is, what period of time that you're looking at and tuning it, those things are going to take time. So when we get into early access, if it still doesn't feel 100% as a player of where you would want it to be, don't feel bad, don't feel surprised, right? Like that's kind of how this process works. Our game is an unfinished game. When we get into early access, it'll be an unfinished game still, and it's a thing where we're going to take the time and make sure we make good decisions about that stuff. I think the other thing, I think maybe that's worth talking about is like, what did you think about punch feedback, right? Like punches is one of those things where it's like, seems like sometimes it's kind of a mixed bag. People think certain punches look better, other ones they don't like as much. Like, what's your perspective on that?
So I think with regards to punches, obviously it's a very subjective field, but at the same time, we acknowledge and we recognize, right, that there are a number of animation fixes that are still to take place. But I guess I do want to talk about the fact that not every punch on every boxer will be absolutely perfect, right? We want all of our boxers to feel different. Not everybody's gonna have the perfect right straight, right? So take Mickey Ward's right straight will be significantly different to Roy Jones Jr.'s, right? So there are elements where we know certain punches, we're going to make improvements on the motion capture we've got, but at the same time, it's that balancing act, right? We could have gone with having just 23, 24 punches in the game and making them all absolutely perfect. But I wanted us to go way beyond that, right? I wanted us to have the full armory of punches, of having like almost 70 punches, right, for each fighter. Now, that makes things way more difficult for us, right, in terms of making sure all 68, 69 punches look absolutely perfect. That is something that we're confident that will happen over time in terms of making those improvements. But overall, I think we're pretty happy in where we are right now with how the punches feel and look. But yeah, that doesn't take away the fact that we do have to make improvements on certain punches. And the impactfulness of punches as well. It's just that balancing act, right? We don't want this to turn into, an arcade style, huge Hollywood, right bombs and huge like reactions where someone's about to fall over on the first punch that they receive. But at the same time, it is a game that has to be enjoyable and fun to play. So for us, it's a constant review of, right, did that punch feel impactful enough, and did that reaction come off like he's just been hit or she's just been hit really hard? And I don't know if we've spoken about this, but the game does have like the impact zones, right, where you could throw a big right hand, right? But if it didn't connect properly, if it didn't hit a critical zone, then the other player is not gonna react like they've been hit in a big way. So there's a lot of nuances to what's happening in the game, and I think once players and gamers kind of understand that, probably have a better review.
I think you get a feel too playing the game over time about where you're positioned and what punches you can throw and where they're likely to land. Because I did see some discussions happening too about like stopping power, right? Where people would say, "Oh, I can't stop somebody." And I don't know if I would say I was surprised to hear that, but I was stopping people a lot, right? So it's like when you can place the punches well, you can even really stop people with the jab, right? Because what happens is you get those counters that stop people, and so when you're doing it really well, you see it fairly often, right? Like, I mean, if somebody is just carelessly punching, I mean, I'll counter them again, counter them again, and people really do shy away. But I think it's a sort of thing where understanding the distance, understanding what shot can be thrown from where. I mean, it's a thing you talk a lot about, Edward, when we're playing, where especially with like power punches, right, where that from certain angles, a specific punch is more likely to land at one angle or one range than another.
Definitely. I mean, it's all positioning is like everything in this game, and that's one of the things that it is jarring for some people, because understanding that element when really it hasn't existed before, where things were more almost like on a 2D plane using like 3D players. I think when people start to realize where they need to be, they'll start having more success, and with more success comes more fun for a lot of people, in my opinion. But there was also a critique that they were talking about auto correcting punches. Do you guys want to talk about that? The auto correction, when you get close, instead of throwing jabs and straight, it turns into hooks.
I'll let Ash take that one. That's a tough one. It's a tough topic, Ash, because we've talked about this one a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it is a tough one. It's not a straightforward scenario. But I guess before we dive into that, I just want to quickly move on to cover off the last bit about feedback around punches. A surprising thing for me was that I read in a few places was that people didn't feel like the jab was a worthwhile punch. Now, that did come across as surprising to me, because again, maybe it's because people just don't maybe understand or realize the number of ways you can throw a jab in our game, where they might only be using the jab where you're stationary and you're throwing out your jab like in previous boxing games. But in ours, in Undisputed, you can throw I think six different types of jab, right? You can jab off the front foot, you can jab off the back foot, you can pivot left jab, pivot right jab, and you can throw out a power jab, right? So having all of those jabs, as well as the stationary jab at your disposal, utilizing all of those makes a huge difference in the game, and you can pretty much defeat an opponent just from your jab. I mean, I tried it and did it a few times in the beta weekend, right? Where people were coming forward trying to throw hooks and all kinds of punches, and I literally just outpointed them over 8 rounds just with the jab alone. So again, the onus is on us to explain to players that this is how you can play the game. And again, it's that element of unlearning what you think you know about boxing games and coming into this.
It's a great point, and I was trying to do the exact same thing that you said, where there was like 1 or 2 rounds even where I threw almost no other punches other than a jab, just to see what I could do. And I think the thing about about having all those different jabs is it gives you choice, but it also allows you to set up traps and fool people into thinking you're going to do something different, right? So when you combine it with your ability to move around, either in loose movement or just kind of like controlling your range with the left analog stick, what happens is, I might do something like come into the center of the ring and make people expect that I'm going to throw that retreating jab, and I get on the edge of range and I'm throwing it and throwing it. And then when they don't expect it, I actually come forward and throw the jab and then throw a hook off of it and then get out, right? Where, you're sort of training your opponent to expect one thing and do another. And then when you put all those together, it can be very difficult to decipher when the jab is going to come, what kind of jab somebody's going to throw, what range for they want to throw it from. And so yeah, I think there's a lot of depth there that's maybe not immediately obvious that it's going to be work for us to make sure people understand how that mechanic works.
Yeah.
Okay, so onto the hooks or the jabs space turning into hooks, right? So here's the thing, because we've removed the invisible barrier that you get in some of the other combat games. That for us gave us an issue in terms of you could be nose to nose with another fighter, right? Now, we motion captured, professional fighters, professional boxers, throwing a jab at that range. And they were questioning us, like saying, well, how do you expect me to throw a jab when, he's going to be, or she's going to be 3 or 4 inches in front of me, right? So we tried a few different solutions, and, it just looked weird throwing a jab when somebody's 3 or 4 inches in front of you, or trying to throw straight when someone's a few inches away from you. And I remember one jab that we had when we were doing that, it looked like you were literally trying to stroke their face because you were that close to them.
Yeah.
And it just looked weird. So
yeah,
we
I think
decided
that's an important point too, right? Like that we know what it looks like in the game, right? When if we make the change, it's not going to be a mystery to us what it looks like with the punches that we have in the game right now. So it's like it's a tough decision, right? Because it's like, do you allow a player to do something that looks just really, really strange from that range, or do you sort of, make this tweak that we've done, and it's just difficult. I don't know. I guess we can always play with what that range is, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things we're looking at right now, based on obviously the feedback we're getting from players, is that it's clear that the solution we have in place right now isn't perfect. We are going to think about even maybe changing that punch to perhaps something else, where it's not just an automatic hook that it turns into. But we are going to have a look at a few other solutions in terms of whether it's tweaking the range when that's activated, because I think it can be frustrating where you wanted to throw a jab or a straight, and the range was there when you wanted to throw it, and maybe the person's moved in that split second and it's turned into a hook. So that is something that we will be looking at for sure.
Okay. Now that we've talked about the beta and the experience and everything, did you want to say?
There's one more feedback thing I want to talk about, because it actually got us like one of the first memes out of our game.
Yes. Everyone's due for a title shot there, Mike.
Which is yeah. So I just want to make sure everyone knows we're aware. We know we know that we should probably apologize to Todd Grisham, because I'm sure he's probably going to hear this now for like from now until forever. That he often says that the winner of this fight is sure to get a title shot. Yes, we know that he says that a lot. Yes, we will fix it. But it is kind of funny to get that sort of meme. And I've been on Twitter, and it's like we'll put out tweets and people will just respond by saying that the winner is sure to get a title shot. And I just want to let everybody know how awesome and hilarious that is, and that we think it's great. So keep the memes rolling in.
and we're also working on that. So
Yes.
Let's go ahead into I think this is an important part because I think this is what people want to know. The beta has ended. The beta's over. There was a good experience for a lot of people. It was a learning experience for us as well. But I think the community truly wants to know what's next now after this beta. What's there to look forward to after this?
So obviously the beta weekend, one of the things was that we wanted to use this to, get the players' feedback, but also put our whole online capabilities to test, right? We've got a lot of data of what happened over the weekend, and obviously it's clear that quite a few people had connection issues, connections dropping out midway through the fight, unable to match make, sat in the search screen for a long time, and even some frame rate issues, right? So all of these things are there for us to fix and resolve. So as the team are working hard right now in terms of putting those fixes in place, and based on that, we will be running another beta for players to test out the game again. The plan is obviously we put these fixes in play and run another beta test.
But we're not yet ready to say exactly when that will be.
So
because it takes a little time to put the fixes in, do some of our own testing, make sure that we, have good message around when the will be and give people a little time to know. We're not talking about it's like crazy far in the future, but I want to acknowledge that we're not actually sharing a date in this roundtable of what the beta will be, and the message is, yep, there's going to be another one. You're going to get to play again, and we'll have more details about that forthcoming. So hang in there, and we'll get that info out to you as soon as we can.
All right, and I think we'll wrap it up there. I think this was a really good talk, and I think we've touched on a lot of the things that a lot of people were conscious of when playing and were thinking about even after the beta. So I do want to let you guys know that you can still go ahead and wishlist us down on Steam. We'll have the link down in the description box below. And of course, as always, thank you so much for participating in the beta. Thank you so much for being this community that we love so much. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.